Okay, so we have applied our stripper solution on the floor, we've emulsified the finish, we've machined the floor, and now we're ready to pick it up. But you know what? The stripper solution on the floor is always going to be a little thick and gooey. So I'm going to use the no-touch cleaning machine. I'm going to spray some water on it. And I'm also going to clean right along that edge so that as I'm doing this, I'm not going to get any more out on that carpet. I'm going to show you exactly how I use the pressure from the no-touch machine. I've eliminated the scraper. I think you'll like to get off your hands and knees and do it my way. Now there's a couple of things that you might have saw me do there. One is that the squeegee never comes off the floor. This is a specially designed squeegee. You might notice that there's two wheels in the squeegee blade, and these wheels allow for the squeegee to roll on the floor. In this way, we're always staying on the floor. The squeegee never comes off the floor. You may have not noticed that, but I just wanted to point that out to you. The other thing is, you might have noticed that I put on my street shoes. I can't have those big stripper boots on with all of that stripper now making marks on my floor. So what I'm going to do now is continue to pick this up. But you also notice I've got a lot of liquid here. The squeegee does not work well unless I have a lot of liquid. So I'm going to go ahead and continue picking up this stripper solution, and then I'll show you what the floor looks like once I'm done. Alright, so we've picked up the stripper. Now we haven't done any rinsing, but as you notice, there's not really a lot of residue on the floor. And this is the great thing about a vacuum. Now, I know there's all kinds of vacuums out there. I've used many of them myself. But whenever you use your vacuum, the wheels and the end of the squeegee, that's what does all of the thing for it. So, what I want to show you is we've done our pH testing along, and I want to keep doing the same thing. All I've got here is some water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some water on a little section of floor. And what I'm going to do is kind of let it sit there for a minute. And this is just plain water. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to use the pH paper that we've been testing all along. Now understand the floor hasn't been rinsed. We just put a little bit of water on there along with our stripper solution and picked it up. So let's find out what the floor is now. So the water is reacting with whatever chemical that we've left on there. So the pH should change. Now before I do that, I want to show you that the pH of the water that's in this cup is actually a 7, because we want our floor to be a 7 before we lay our finish. So I've tested the water here, and I've got my pH paper, and as you can see, the pH of the water is 7. So what do I want my floor? I want my floor to be a 7. So I'm going to agitate the water just a little bit with my finger, make sure that the water got mixed up with whatever chemical residue might be here. And what we're going to do is we're going to test the pH of the water that's on the floor. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to tell me if there's any stripper solution left on the floor which is going to react negatively to my floor finish. And folks, what you can see is the pH of the water on the floor is a 7 as well. And I haven't even rinsed. There's no needs. You haven't seen me use a standard mop and bucket. We don't need them. So what I'm going to do at this point is I've got a little bit of rinsing to do. I'm going to do that with my no-touch system. I'm simply going to spray a coat of water over it, vacuum it up, and the floor is ready for finish. Now, not all floors can you go through and just do one strip like we did. You may have a floor which needs to have more than one stripping process. Go ahead and do those, touch up those areas, and then do your pH paper test like this before you apply your finish. I think you'll find out that you'll have a very quality floor that way. Come on back and we'll lay some finish next. So I'm glad that you stayed with me through the stripping process. We're going to lay finish in just a minute, but what do we need to do before we do that? We need to clean up all of our equipment that we use. Now we have our no-touch machine and we have our rinse water and our vacuum. So before we finish the day, we're going to clean all that up. But I just wanted to mention one thing. You might have noticed that I wore my sandals here today, and there's a reason for this. You can wear whatever shoes that you want to as far as your street shoes, because your stripping boots have protected you while you're doing that. Choose whatever footwear that you want, but I want you to notice that I didn't get my shoes and my feet all wet. There's no reason for this, folks. If you use a process that I've just shown you, safety and security is a very #1 issue when it comes to the frontline person doing the job. So, to continue that message, let's clean up our equipment so that the next time we go to use it, it's ready to go. I'm simply going to use the pressure of the sprayer and rinse it now. Now folks, there's one final thing that we need to do before we lay our finish. I've shown you the pH testing all the way through this series of videos, and if you'll come right back after this, I'm going to show you the final step before we lay our finish, and that's making sure the floor is a neutral pH. So the last step before we lay floor finish is we need to make sure that our floor is neutral. Now I showed you right after we picked up the stripper that it was neutral. What I've done is I've rinsed the floor with water. I just sprayed it with a no-touch machine and applied it and vacuumed it up. So just as I did with the water before, I'm going to pour enough water out here to cover about one tile. Let it sit for a minute. Kind of work my fingers across it to make sure that if there's any residue from the chemical stripper left there, I've actually found that. Got my pH paper out here. And we're going to do our test just like we have done all along. And as we said before, we want this water to be neutral. And so 7 is neutral. And folks, I believe we have a 7 pH floor. Now the floor is ready for finish. We will get the proper durability and application of the floor finish if we lay it right. Now, stay with us. We've got one last step, laying the floor finish properly. Okay, you've been with me so far. I'm glad you stayed with me. What I'm going to show you now is a way to lay floor finish. It's going to probably save you between 20 and 25% of the floor finish that you've been using if you've used a conventional mop and bucket method. Now, as you can see here, there's no mop bucket, there's no normal string mop. There's just the product and the applicator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the product directly on the floor. It's going to go on the floor pure. As I showed you before, we have a pH of 7 on the floor, and that is what's going to give us a proper job. So I'm going to pour out about 2 squares of finish, and I'm going to pour that directly onto the floor. You can see I've covered about 2 squares. And now I'm going to take and put the cap back on my finish, step back. Now I'm going to take this applicator. You notice this is a swivel applicator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this finish down here like this. And we're going to cover this. I'm standing in these 2 squares here, and I'm going to reach 2 squares to each side. And we're simply going to apply the finish from side to side. As you notice, the swivel handle swivels as I pull it backwards. I'm not using a lot of pressure. You notice where my hands are positioned. As I come back here to my puddle of finish, my mop has gotten dry. It's picked up that puddle. I've got a smooth, even coat all the way here to the end. All I'm going to do is step over to the other side and repeat the same process on the rest of the floor. Okay, so you can see I'm at the end of laying my finish, and I've got my applicator here. So I just take and lift the applicator up like this. Instead of using the mop and bucket and having that liner in the bucket, I'm actually going to use my liner a little differently than what you might have. Because you can see there's no finish dripping off of my pad. All of the finish that's been put on the floor is went directly on the floor. It's not holding up in the pad, so I'm not going to get a lot. So what I'm going to do is simply take this, put it into the liner, give it a spin, and that's up like that. My floor finish is drying on the floor, not in the bucket. So what we've done is we've put the finish on the floor. It's drying right where it should be. There's no contaminants in the finish, and I've used a very little bit of floor finish. If you really look at it, I only coated 4 tiles with finish, but yet I covered this whole area, which is about a 15 by 15 square foot area. So when I told you I could lay floor finish and save you a lot of money, there's the way we do it. Thanks for watching this series. I'm sure we'll have another one in our how-to videos from the ACE Academy of Cleaning Excellence.